Welcome to the Black Appalachian Coalition's podcast entitled Blac Re-Membering, where we will bring to you the heavy and the hope across the Ohio River Valley. We want to remember who we are, where we've come from. We want to speak to the oral history of what we've done, what we've achieved. We want to speak to the ills that we have experienced while also finding solutions to those problems, those issues. We want to deal with the narrative that has kept us deeply rooted in despair. Now we want to punch through that narrative and stand up and say, we are remembering our Black past, and we are rooted, and we are here to stay. Welcome to Blac Re-Membering. We hope that you find your place, your space, and your voice in this podcast.
My next question is for Professor Baskin. You most recently taught at Simmons College, which is an HBCU, a historically Black college or university in Louisville, Kentucky. Why was it important for you to teach at Simmons?
I wanted to end my career teaching at a historically Black college or university. I think I also wanted to have the experience of teaching at a HBCU. I wanted to also be able to compare it to my experiences at teaching at Ferrum and Berea. And I think, in all honesty, I maybe got to a point at Berea. I think I had accomplished everything I could accomplish there. I felt it was time for new blood at Berea, but I still felt that I could teach. But what I wasn't prepared for, which I know most of the people, a majority of people were not prepared for, was the pandemic. And I started at Simmons in August of 2019, finished the first semester teaching one class. And then the next semester, we got to spring break. Everybody said goodbye. And then it was a year and a half before I came back to the Simmons campus. So I taught there 3 years. And I guess what I always have gotten the question, what is the difference between teaching at an HBCU like Simmons and teaching at a PWI like Berea? Well, first of all, Berea is not your traditional PWI. But the main difference is not one school was Black and one school was white. Shanita, the difference is one school had money and one school doesn't. But the students at that time, they didn't have the technology. Berea students, everybody gets a laptop computer. That wasn't true at Simmons. You either had it or the school might provide you with a Chromebook. I did have some students who were trying to write papers for me on their cell phones because they didn't have the technology. They didn't have the technology at home. They did not live on campus. Many of them lived in the community. First time I've ever heard of students taking an Uber to get to class or riding the transit system to get to class. So there were a lot of things that I guess a Berea student would call hardships. Although I would say the students at Simmons did less, notice I said less complaining than the students at Berea who have everything. But the one thing that really, that I loved about being at Simmons, they were unapologetically Black. They didn't put on any airs. There was no code switching. That was a Black school. It was an HBCU. And even the few white students who were there accepted that. The majority of the faculty was white. They accepted that. The student body, it wasn't a Black school. They talked about. They only had one Black fraternity at that time, but they talked about the band and how the importance of the band, like many other HBCUs. So it was good. I think one other reason that I may have gone to Simmons, and And I remember, you might remember Renessa White, and I will say her name. Mm-hmm. And she said something, made a statement that was an interesting statement, that I was going to Simmons to regain my soul. And that statement, I think she said it jokingly, but that statement did cause me to think. And you might remember in your classes, I would always ask the question, if you were an African American and you attended a predominantly white school or taught at one, were you a traitor to your race? Now think about the question before you say, wow. Think about the question. If you've taken the talent and you're part of the talent, you're part of what Du Bois would call the talented 10. Are we serving the Black community if the talented 10 is going to predominantly white schools? That's a philosophical question. You don't have to answer now. You can think about it tonight. But you are part of the talented 10. You would be part of that. Okay. And the majority of African Americans are more in the Du Bois, in the Washington.
I would say that I would love to teach at an HBCU at some point in my life. That is a goal. And I'm glad that you got to end your career at an HBCU, despite the pandemic that threw us all. But I do understand why Renessa would say that, to regain your soul, because it's almost like you're fighting. And PWIs, a part of being at Berea was learning about pedagogy and how to form classrooms and how to make it a classroom where students who are traditionally marginalized can thrive. And that's thinking about how violent PWIs can be and have been on students of color and Black students in particular. Taking that class made me realize that I was defensive in a lot of academic settings, because I had to justify being in the honors classes from the time I was in second or third grade, and having my mom like come up to the school and be like, she's supposed to go to this special group, she's supposed to be in this class, having teachers march my grades down in middle school and demand that I be placed in different classes. And if I didn't have the advocacy of my mom, my teachers, and myself, then my academic path and my concept of my own self-worth would have been a lot different. And I think about that and how it forms my own relationship with academics. And I think that's why I'm still in it. So definitely want to teach at an HBCU one day. Y'all have made leaps and bounds for countless students of color, and especially and specifically Black students. Y'all are humble. So I'm going to go ahead and brag on y'all by saying that without the work you both have done, myself and so many brilliant scholars would not be on the path of success that we are on. I've recently reconnected with 2 Berea AFR alums, and I don't have permission to say their names, but y'all know who y'all are if y'all listening. But I was proud to see how far they've come and how far we all have come, and how we are all somehow making strides in academia. And I don't think any of us plan to do that. And I'm talking tenure track positions and positions of authority, and all of us came from the AFR department of Berea. And Berea is great, but I give that credit to y'all. Ms. Symerdar, you showed us so much love, and you opened your doors when we couldn't get home for Thanksgiving break. And you've done that for countless students over the years. And I will never forget that. Like, I remember feeling so low and so frustrated that I couldn't figure out a way to get myself home. And you both of y'all just took us in. But I remember that. I will never forget that. Thank you. Professor Dr. Baskin, you are literally the reason why the African and African American Studies major and minor exist at our alma mater. I would not have a major without the work that you've done. So when I say that I am honored, y'all, for anybody who's listening, I'm not exaggerating. I am honored. And that's why. So I'm going to get off my little soapbox, and I'm going to ask y'all a direct question. So together, y'all compiled the Lincoln Institute's oral history collection, right? Yes. So, Ms. Symerdar, could you tell us more about the history behind the Lincoln Institute and why archiving these oral histories is so important?
Well, I married a historian, okay?
That's valid.
I am science and math. So, they say opposites attract. When one of us has a task, the other one just migrates to that until it's done. So in doing that with the oral histories, I learned to appreciate histories and what history can let you know about your past. It was wonderful meeting the people, because they, even this many years later, they were still excited because they had an opportunity to go to Lincoln Institute. I had an opportunity to tour the facilities and to learn that these young people were willing to leave their families and go live in a dorm in a place they had never been before. To go through that and cry when it was time for them to leave and to go through the Blue Gate. It just does something for you as an individual to say, I was a part of that. Whether I was holding the mic or just smiling at the little old lady so she'd keep on talking. It was wonderful. So it benefited me just as much as I think it would have the person doing it.
Well, I would say that Lincoln Institute was important, not because it's tied into Berea history. Once again, Lincoln Institute was one of those all-Black schools that disappeared because of Brown versus Board of Education. So it's interesting. Brown versus Board of Education, it really led to the destruction of Black schools, which is now, I said, has had a negative impact upon the Black community. The reason I wanted to get involved with recording the oral histories of what I would call Lincolnites is because every day there are going to be less graduates of Lincoln Institute alive. And one day there won't be any. And someone is going to tell your story. And quite often the story that is written is the story is told in a written form. And the person and remember, what's in the written form is also biased. And what I tried to do with the Oral History Project was allow Lincolnites to tell their story of what it was like to be a student, a faculty member, or a staff person at Lincoln Institute. Without those interviews, when the people die, then that means their stories are gone. So I think it's important. I think the stories are important. There was just something about those schools that I don't think you find with many African Americans who attend predominantly white institutions. The Black schools, the lack of money, the lack of facilities, the used textbooks, there was a sense of community. And you talked a few minutes ago about us, Symerdar and I think if anything we try to do is we try to create a sense of community. Now, I want to always say we were not always successful because we're humans, but that's what we tried to do. Because I made it through because of a community. Symerdar made it through because of a community. And we think our daughters were able to accomplish what they've accomplished because of community. And we felt that when a student came to Berea, if they wanted, and some students did not want our assistance and did not need it, but if they wanted it, we would be there to help them because that's what you're supposed to do.
I'm thinking about anyone out there who is listening and might get anything that we say twisted. I just want to clarify. If we don't record these oral histories, then inaccurate narrative gets promoted, right? Like that is doing the same work that was done whenever slave narratives were recorded, just on a different level, right? Like if the actual lived experiences aren't documented, then you're going to get misunderstandings on a systemic level. These narratives are important. And we're not saying that integration should have never happened. But I think at least I'm not saying that, but I think there's a distinction between integration and desegregation, and it's not all happy, sugar plums and rainbows, and it's not all good, right? Like, it's more complex and complicated, and without these oral histories and narratives, you miss that part of it, and it gets erased from history. So we're actively fighting the erasure of history with these oral histories and podcasts and narratives, etc.
I do like how you use two words, integration and desegregation. They are not the same. And American society, and especially the schools, are desegregated. They are not integrated. And I think that was the problem in the 1950s, 60s, civil rights movement, and even now. They are not integrated. And I will argue anyone, and that is the reason I tend not to use the word integrated. Integration, I use the word desegregated. We might be in the same environments, but integration is when you're learning. There's an interchange of cultures, ideas, traditions, values, and you see both as being somewhat equal. Desegregation means, yes, we're in the same environment, but one viewpoint is still considered superior to the other one. So I'm gonna stick to the advantage of the Black schools is, from the viewpoint of our generation, would be that they were a community, and we were challenged, and I think I was challenged to be the best student I could be. And I think Symerdar that would say that. And when we went to the white schools, we weren't challenged. So it's somewhat interesting that we both ended up going to predominantly white colleges and universities instead of what would be called HBCUs. But I guess you could say maybe that's where we sold our soul.
Sold our soul for free tuition.
For no tuition.
Scholarships.
If anyone out there wants an analogy, I think it's safe to say that integration is to the concept of equality as desegregation is to the concept of equity.
Very good.
But this question is for you both, and I think we've been touching on it throughout, but how do we operate with a community mindset?
You have to form your community. If you don't have one, there are ways that you can do things, add things, subtract things to make, quote unquote, a community. We have never lived where either set of family has been. We have made trips to visit family. Family has visited us. We did the phone calls. We did the text and the Facebook when it came. But you have to create a safe space for the people that you care about. And I think that's what we try to do with students. If you can't find what you need over there, then we'll help you get it over here. Families that are by blood, we don't get to choose. And some of them you don't even like. Friends, acquaintances, students, neighbors, you get to choose. So build your own family with people that you care about.
So, Ms. Symerdar, I carry one of your quotes with me till this day. It was the National Council for Black Studies. They held their annual conference. So we were in NOLA for the Honor Society induction ceremony. And we were walking down the street, and it was like 20 different some odd conversations going on. But you said something off the cuff, and it was along the lines of complacency is dangerous. And that part stood out to me. Out of all the noise that was going on around me, you saying that just resonated, and that's a memory that I carry. So I'm going to say it again in case any of our listeners didn't hear it the first time. Complacency is dangerous. Could you elaborate on that quote for us? I have my own interpretation, but I want to hear what you mean.
Complacency means you get comfortable. You don't strive for the sun because you're satisfied with having 1 or 2 stars. When you get complacent, you don't strive to do your best. And I think that's what Professor Baskin was able to do in his classes. He didn't allow you to become complacent. You just can't be off your guard. And I think probably in one of those things we were talking about, everybody smiling in your face is not your friend.
For me, the quote, complacency is dangerous, means, as you said, Ms. Symerdar, not to get too comfortable. And yes, I can and am and will be proud of myself. And yes, I can acknowledge that God and my ancestors got me here. And at the same time, I can strive for better. And I can embody that growth mindset. Anyone listening can embody that growth mindset. So complacency is dangerous is a warning against stagnation. Is how I've carried it throughout the years. I like to end each episode by asking our featured guests to drop some knowledge on us. So do y'all have any nuggets of wisdom to leave with our listeners?
Be true to yourself, no matter what the situation is. Don't allow other people to change who you are.
I would say what I said in class, you have to work smarter, not necessarily harder. Because if you work smarter and that's all you do, then you're going to be doing the same thing that you've been doing and you're going to get the same result. You have to work smarter. Know your past, but you don't live in your past. Also, I am definitely a Carter G. Woodson man, and don't be miseducated. And that means that the person must study for him and herself. They must do research. They must ask questions. They don't accept because somebody else gives an answer that's the right answer. Because the best way to enslave someone is not necessarily physical. The best way to enslave someone is to control their education system, because if you control their education system, you control the mind. And that goes back to the most famous quote from Dr. Woodson. And if you control your education, they're going to control your thoughts. And if they control your thoughts, they're going to control your action. So I'm a Carter G. Woodson man. And no, you control your education. And I think that's what Symerdar and I have been trying to do. Don't get so stuck in the past that you forget how much progress has been made. And if for those of people, everyone who's listening, go talk to your ancestors. Go talk to your elders. Go talk about what they had to go through. And they will tell you what they went through is to present the opportunities that you now have in 2023.
Yes, sir. Thank you. For any of y'all who are curious as to how to commune with your ancestors, we will hopefully have a podcast episode on how to do that. But thank y'all for tuning. Thank you, Professor Dr. Baskin and Ms. Symerdar, for joining us. And thanks for tuning in to Blac Re-Membering, highlighting the heavy and the hope. Be sure to check out our short show notes for more information about the Andrew and Symerdar Baskin Student Research Fund and details on how to get involved. Peace and blessings, y'all. Thank you.